Welcome, everybody. My name is Kim Kratis. I'm the artistic director of 16th Street Actors Studio, and I just got on very briefly to introduce you to Iain Sinclair, who is our head of acting at 16th Street, but also an incredibly highly regarded and celebrated theatre director in Australia. And I thought I would just say something, Iain, if you don't mind. It's talking just a little bit about you. But most actors I speak to, well, actually, I don't think there's ever been an actor who hasn't said this, but after they have been auditioned by you and had that experience, they all walk out of that audition or that experience feeling incredibly empowered and actually having really enjoyed the experience. For a lot of actors, auditioning is a frightening experience, but that doesn't seem to be the case when they work with you. So I want to ask you one question, then I'm going to leave. But the question is, Iain, what do you think it is that enables a good audition to take place from a director's perspective towards an actor? What do directors need to bring to the table to give a good, or to enable a good audition to take place for an actor?
Well, it's a great question, Kim. I think the simple fact is that just as you said, auditions can be really harrowing, and because you bring so much of your sort of hopes and dreams to each one, and of course the numbers are stacked out of your favor, and there are many reasons why auditions are just plain weird. It's hard to be yourself. I mean, it's hard to be yourself in most sort of work application settings, but then suddenly when you have to do that and be genuine and available and all of those other things, you have to open yourself up, and the great irony, I think, is that this is a profession that attracts the most sensitive people and is generally the toughest, and has the highest level of rejection out of all of the professions, which is tough. But I think to answer your question about what it is directors need to do, I find if I do a day's worth of auditions, I'm more exhausted from one day's auditions than I am from 2 weeks worth of rehearsal, maybe even more so. They really take it out of you. And that's because you need to have a director needs to be able to create a fertile environment for good art to take place in a hostile place. It's a little bit like watching The Martian, where what we're trying to do is create life on Mars under very hostile circumstances, and do it so enough for us to be able to read that there's the deep humanity, no matter how far away we are from planet Earth, and so I think most directors worth their salt spend their time in audition with people, putting them in a place where they're at their most fertile. And I guess that would be the first thing to talk about, which is to come to your audition in a way that when you press the seed into the soil and it gets watered, that it can germinate quickly, and I guess that's what I'll lead into now. But hopefully that answers your question, Kim.
It does, because I'm sure there'll be some directors there or actors at the very least who may actually wish to actually become directors down the track. So Iain, thanks so much for joining everybody tonight, and happy Christmas to you all. Thanks, Iain.
Thank you very much, Kim.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, hello, everyone. Hello, actors. Yeah, so I thought I might just follow on from that a little bit. Just so you know, we'll probably talk for about 10, 15 minutes. I've got some questions that have been sent through as well, so I won't take up too much of your time. I think the first thing to say is that there's no perfect rubric. There's no sequence of things you can go through to guarantee that an audition goes very well. But there are certain things you can do, I think, to make the experience a fruitful one for yourself, and one that isn't traumatic. God knows they are traumatic, I think part of that is the mindset that you bring to it. So I might talk a little bit about that. I've created a BuzzFeed like top 10, it's maybe 11 things to think about when you're preparing for an audition, and then we'll go from there, I guess. So I'll go through the 10, and then I'll go into a little bit of detail with each one of them. And also, if you've got some questions, please ping them through to Elise, and I'll try to answer them as well. But the first one I'd like to suggest to everybody is mindset. Um, that the vast majority of the time when you go for auditions, people are in the wrong mindset, and the mindset that generally people are in is that they have a career problem that they need to solve. Which is fine, but that's a lot to pin on a casting or an audition situation. Um, in the same way that, I don't know, if you've got a romance problem that you need to solve, it's not necessarily the best mindset to bring to a first date. So rather than thinking that you've got a career problem that you need to solve in this next audition, I'd like to suggest that you think about it this way: that the people who are running the audition have gone to the effort of doing so, not out of charity, but because they have a problem. Uh, and their problem is a casting problem that they need to solve. And if you think about it in that way, that they've gone to all this effort to get in contact with agents, to do the brief, to do all those things, it's because they don't have that person yet. They haven't cast that particular role yet. And so if you can work out a way to identify what the casting problem is and work out a way that you can solve that problem, already you're in a positive mindset. As opposed to, God, this one had better be the one, because if it's not, maybe I'll give up. But if you think to yourself, what problem have they got? How many people do they need to see, and how can I solve that problem for them? So if I was to give an anecdote about that, the most sort of demonstrable moment, I think, over the past sort of 5, 6 years of that for me was when I did View from the Bridge at Melbourne Theatre Company quite a while ago now. I lost an actor for the role of Eddie Carbone. It was the actor who'd worked with me on the show in Sydney. He decided to get out of the game altogether, and so he sent me a lovely email saying, I'm not going to be an actor anymore. I'm going to be a coder, and he's doing very well, so I hear. Um, I suddenly had a massive casting problem, and that was I don't have an Eddie Carbone. So of course I met up with Janine at Melbourne Theatre Company, and we talked for quite a while about what are the characteristics of Eddie that we were looking for, what sort of people were available in Victoria to play that role. And I went to bed that night in a hot panic, which was, I've got a problem that I haven't yet solved, and until I solve that problem, I can't imagine the whole show. Sure enough, I had a bunch of wonderful actors coming through, and this is a seniors actors role. And then Steve Bastoni came in and clearly solved my problem for me. And you could tell that that's what he came in to do. It wasn't to resurrect his career. It wasn't to impress the hell out of me. It was to put some ointment, put some balm on my hot wound and stitch it up for me. And so when he came in, I think the first thing he did was greet the reader, Marco Chiappi, in Italian, just to quietly let me know that my Italian problem was solved, and then came straight up to meet me and told me about all of his understanding of Miller very comfortably. And this wasn't big noting himself. What he was doing was letting me know that the challenge, that very tight set of parameters that I had, would be addressed by him. So he solved my casting problem, as opposed to tried to use the audition to give himself a one-up, which I'm sure, of course, that's part of it. But the main thing is that he came in and identified my problem and solved it. So that's the first one, mindset. They have the casting problem. You don't have the career problem. Maybe the next point that I'd like to sort of talk to you about is this is a big one for younger actors, I think, which is that auditions aren't a popularity contest. It's nice to work with friendly people, and it's nice to work with people who are charismatic and engaged and all of those things. But once again, if uh, if the energy that you bring into the room doesn't pertain to the casting problem, then what are you doing? You don't really need to expend a lot of extra information to people in casting, because they're looking again for something that fits the particular brief. And it's useful, I think, instead of trying to sort of ingratiate yourself with the people that you're with, once again, be nice, be lovely, that's fine. But rather than go the next level, which is, I don't know, try to get invited to their wedding, instead of that, just remember that you're a tradesperson, and you're a tradesperson who's laying out your wares and showing what you're capable of. So in the old days, a carpenter would actually bring in pieces of their work to demonstrate the level of their craft, quite literally. And so that's a better way of thinking about any form of casting that you do, which is, you know what level of craft you're working at, and so you choose pieces, you choose uh, materials that demonstrate the craft level that you've managed to achieve. So if you're an expert wood turner, then you bring in a beautifully turned piece of ash, mountain ash or something like that. And so choose material that actually demonstrates you at the craft level that you're at, in the same way that a potter or a wheelwright or a cooper, yeah, they're the people who make the barrels, would come in and demonstrate the level of competence that they're working at as well. So it's not a popularity contest. What we're actually looking for is people with a certain level of trade, who are comfortable and happy to demonstrate that level of ability. So it's a trade show, and that's a useful way of thinking about it. And that way you won't fall into that whole thing of, did they like me? I mean, the very idea, carpenters don't need to be liked. They need their work to be respected and appreciated and wanted. So you don't have to be lovely, you don't have to be charismatic and fun, you don't have to go to their wedding, but you do have to demonstrate that you have the requisite craft levels to be able to fulfill the role of problem number one, which is they have a casting problem. Okay, so that's number two. It's not a popularity contest. Number three. Now this is a big one, and I think a lot of people underestimate the power of this one. But it's, be prepared, and I mean really be prepared, because if you say, for example, if you go through the 6 ways to read a script that we can send to you, which is one of the processes that we teach here at 16th Street, if you have read a script 6 different ways at a minimum, if you have done the maximum amount of research, if you have gleaned all of the information you can, preferably if you know more about the screenplay or the play or even the TVC than the casting director or the director themselves, then you put yourself into a very, very narrow band of people. So sure, there's loads of people who come along to a casting, and the more open the casting, the higher the probability that the level of preparation will be low. Now, let's face it, a lot of people who have become actors because they got noticed when they were 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, right? So you managed to get by on charisma alone. It means you didn't have to learn an instrument, you didn't have to learn a language, you didn't have to go and do the hard work for dance routines and all that sort of stuff. There's a huge proportion of the acting world that are people who secretly know that they can get by on charisma alone. Now, those people, of course, will get certain roles for the ones that they're perfect for, etc., but they tend not to be prepared. Some of them make love to the idea that it keeps them original and fresh and new and all of those things. And yes, it does to a certain extent, I guess. But it means that they're very rarely ready for adjustments and very rarely ready for different possible interpretations. Now, so if you are really well prepared, if you've done 6 reads, if you've done the highest level of preparation you can get, that already puts you in the top 10% of actors. Even if you've read it once or twice and you've got your lines down, that'll put you in about the top 30, 40% of actors who are going for things. And then there's the rest of them. And there's a million reasons why people are not prepared. You know, you've got another job, you have a child. They're like, so this is not necessarily a value-based thing on in terms of you know, how well prepared certain actors are. There are, of course, there are actors that I've cast who have not been well prepared because they've got higher levels of craft, or they're perfect for the role and they've solved my casting problem. So it's not necessarily a deal breaker. But if you prepare to the maximum level that you can, you massively increase your chances, because you put yourself up in an echelon of people, which is probably 10% if you've done the maximum level of preparation. There are some people who do that habitually, and they're the people who really, really, really want it. But imagine if every single casting you went for as though it was something that you really, really, really wanted. Yeah. And then you did the homework. You read the script. You did all of the detailed work. You did all the script analysis. You actioned the hell out of the script. All of those things. So by the time you get to it, it comes very comfortably. So that's number 3. Be prepared enough to get yourself in the top 10% of the other people going for that particular role. Point 4. Beware of the shower version. I'll say it again. Point 4 is beware of the shower version. So this is something that happens to us all. You work terrifically hard on something only to suddenly turn up at the job interview, or turn up at the first date, or whatever it is that really means so much to you. And all of the magic that you'd prepared and thought of and dreamed about escapes you. Now, that's got something to do with something that psychologists call dependent state theory. So the reason it's called the shower version in the biz is because very regularly an actor will prepare something in the shower, right? Or in a version of the shower. They'll do it in their bedroom or in the back garden. And they'll have worked the pitch so well and found all sorts of wonderful connections while having shampoo or conditioner in their hair, and feeling really good about it. And they'll come up to the director just as you walk in to begin rehearsals and they'll say, you know, that monologue, I've got it. I did it in the shower this morning. It was wonderful. But the trouble is, because of dependent state theory, the idea behind dependent state theory is that whatever circumstances you learn and practice in, you become dependent on the state that you learned and practiced that particular thing in, which can cause a little bit of a challenge for you. So it means that you could probably do that monologue perfectly if there was hot water running and there was nobody else looking at you, and you were in that wonderful dependent state for that particular piece that you were delivering. I had a friend who uses the perfume samplers at Myers, right, for every script that he works on. And so he'll go and get a different perfume for each script. And then while he's learning the script, he'll smell the perfume to put himself into the dependent state of that particular piece. And then before he goes into the audition, he'll smell that particular perfume, or he'll stick the perfume tester in his top pocket. So the way you get around this, the way you escape the shower version, which depends on you being in that particular comfortable state, is while you're rehearsing the piece that you're going to present, the piece that you're going to workshop with the casting director and the director in the audition. Imagine yourself in many different states. So yes, the shower, great. But also imagine yourself turning up to the audition and having to perform it with 4 people in a panel, a designer who doesn't want to be there or who has missed lunch, somebody else who I don't know, who has somebody else in mind for the role. Anything that might throw you out of a good performance, and practice that too in your mental rehearsal. So it means that while you're doing it in your bedroom or in the shower, you're also imaginatively recreating the entire framework for that performance. So the most hostile, the most difficult version is something that you've already psychologically prepared yourself for. So you're no longer in dependent state for one particular thing. You don't need hot water running down your back in order to be able to wonder whether or not you should be or not be. You can actually do that under many different circumstances. So beware of the shower version, and the way you avoid the shower version is by making sure that you practice your work in many different imagined contexts. And that's the semiotics of the rehearsal room. But it's also other things. It's also the possibility that the director might have a completely different version. And I'll get onto that a little bit later, which is be ready, exhaust all possible interpretations, but I'll get to that a little bit later. But make sure that when you rehearse mentally for this, that your dependent state are many different types. That I don't know, there's somebody rapping on the window, you've lost your voice, you've suddenly been delivered terrible news, all of the different possibilities. So when you go in there, the likelihood that is one or two there are one or two very nice people there at the audition who have a casting problem to solve means that you'll be in a wonderful state rather than in one that you're not ready for. So dependent state, that's a really useful one. So beware of the shower version is number 4. Let's move on now to number 5. This is a similar one to the shower version, but this has got to do with persona and what I guess doctors would call bedside manner. Um, but I'll put it this way. So point 5 is beware of the acting suit. We've all got one, right? It's that funny feeling. You can always tell when you've got the acting suit on because you suddenly don't know where your hands are supposed to go. You feel as that you feel very aware of yourself all of a sudden. The the acting suit nearly always comes, by the way, when when you allow your needs, the needs of you, the actor, and you, the actor with the career, to replace the needs of the character you're playing. So I strongly suggest that the first thing to do with to not suddenly feel as though you've zipped yourself up into an acting suit full with its own discrete microclimate and all of those sorts of things, that feeling of hi, how's it going, and suddenly you're aware of yourself terribly. The first thing to do is just stay calm before you go in and try having no suit at all, right? Just come in as yourself, happy in the knowledge that they've got a casting problem. Introduce yourself simply, right? No need to push your own private persona or your charisma onto anybody. Instead, just greet them, have a chat, talk to them about the piece, and if you've done your 6 reads, at minimum, you'll be in a place where you can really talk comfortably about that particular piece of work. And then when they say, well, let's get started, or let's have a look, or in your own time, or any of the magic words that get used, make sure that the first thing you do is a need that the character has rather than a need that you have. And if we were to boil acting down to its fundamental ingredients, I would say it's something along the lines of the fact that the character you're playing is you with your needs replaced under imaginary circumstances. So if you go in with your needs, so your needs are to be liked, to have your career move forwards, to get the gig, to be impressive, to be convincing. None of those things are needs that your character has. It's very rare that you'll go in for a casting, unless it's Tootsie or something. It's very rare that you go in for a casting where the needs of the character match the needs of the actor. So the way you get rid of the acting suit, that weird feeling of being inside your head and aware of your body and your hands and all of that, and where your all your sort of spatial awareness gets knocked out the window, etc. And that's because you've got two consciousnesses going on at the same time. It's very hard. I don't know if you've tried. I learned to drive with my mum, and I couldn't do it because there were two consciousnesses trying to drive the car. It's similar thing to that. So instead of that, what you do is you replace your needs with the character's needs. How do you do that? By doing straightforward text analysis. And that's where you ask the key questions, the really simple ones. What do I want? What's in the way? What do I know? What do I need to do to get around the obstacle that's in the way to get what I want? Really basic questions. And if you go back to the basic, simple professional actor questions, right? What do I want? What's in the way? What do I need to do to get around what's in the way so I can get what I want? What you'll end up reminding yourself of is the needs of the character rather than the needs of the actor in the room. So once again, they have a casting problem. You don't have a career problem. So just go in there with the problems that relate to the character you're playing. And that's you with their needs. That's all it is. Okay, so that's number 5. Beware of the acting suit. And the way you get rid of the acting suit, as I just mentioned, is to make sure that your needs don't climb over the top of the character's needs. Very important. All right. So, number 6, nerves. Now, nerves are a huge challenge, of course, and I can't pretend to be anybody who's actually overcome that myself. It still takes me an incredible amount of courage to even stand in a foyer after a show that I've directed has opened. So I don't pretend to be a master or a champion of getting over my nerves at all, except to say that. I've been given some wonderful advice in the past, and I want to share that with you. Um, as a director, before opening night, of course, you go backstage and you meet all of the actors and give them a squeeze and give them a card and all of those sorts of things. And when you talk to the actors, quite often you'll say how you feeling, and it's pretty much 50-50. 50% of the actors will say, I'm nervous. And the other half will say, I'm excited. Now, apparently, neurologically, there's no difference between the two, except in the way that your cognition manifests around those feelings. So, the difference between being nervous and being excited is perspective. So, what I'd like to suggest you do in those circumstances is use what psychologists call cognitive reappraisal. And what you do with that is you simply reframe your perspective about the feelings that you've got. Yeah. So this involves changing how one interprets a situation. So instead of viewing nervousness as a sign of inadequacy or fear, you can just see it as proof of investment and care into an upcoming event. And this shift in perspective can change your emotional response from anxiety to anticipation or to excitement very quickly. So the other thing to do with reframing your perspective and engaging in cognitive reappraisal is it seems silly, okay? And you will feel like a little bit of an idiot doing it, but hey, it works, which is just engage in positive self-talk. So it's every time you hear yourself saying something negative, like I'm going to bugger this up, or oh my God, I better get this right because if I don't, this terrible thing is going to happen. Every time you do that, just sit back for a second and reframe it. You'll feel a little bit silly. Oh, hey, you might feel a little bit American, but those guys get ahead, right? Which is just reframe the narrative enough. So of the 50% of people that tell me that they're excited before they go on, I bet you there's still a whole bunch of them who are feeling nervous, but they're professionally engaging in reframing their perspective and cognitively reappraising things. Yeah, so it's surprisingly effective. So it's things like saying to yourself, this is an opportunity to shine. Yeah. But the brain is an extremely obedient organ in the sense that if you ask it the wrong, so if you ask it any question, it will do everything it can very obediently to answer those questions. So if you ask your brain, why don't I have any friends before you go to bed, I bet you'll wake up with some very good reasons why. If you ask yourself, if you say to yourself before you go on, you know, please God, don't let me fuck this up. Sorry for my language, but that's exactly a phrase that I say to myself before I go on. The brain is going to find all of the ways that you might bugger that up, right? So if you reframe it into a very simple way, which is how can I use this opportunity to shine? You'll be surprised by how much reframing of perspective and cognitive reappraisal works in your favor. So, point six, nerves are excitement, and excitement is the opportunity to reframe what you're thinking into something useful. Okay, so that's point six. We'll jump straight to point seven now. And there's a little bit of technical talk with seven, but I'll give you some readings to do with it if you're interested in this particular area. But it's around status. Those of you who've trained with me will know that I'm very much interested in the way status and hierarchies of interaction, function, work with different people. So it was just me trying to pull a card. Those of you who know I use cards for this particular process. But very regularly, an actor will go in for a casting very low status. So if we just say we do it out of 10, quite regularly, an actor will come in status 3 or 4. That means they're collapsed inside. They're grateful to be there. Um, they don't put their personality into the room very much. And the challenge with that, of course, is that most characters that are written in screenplays and plays tend to be 4 and above out of 10. Those lower status characters do exist, but they rarely exist in screenplay and in plays because it's very hard to get things done if you're status 1, 2, or 3. So just as a general rule, when you come into a rehearsal, into an audition or a rehearsal room or walk on set, have your professional bedside manner around 8, around 7 or 8, which is you don't think you're better than everybody else. You do have confidence in your ability. You've done all the preparation, which puts you in the top 10% already. You're calm. You've reframed your perspective, and you know that you can solve their casting problem. And so, if you put yourself somewhere around a 7 or 8, what's that? A rook or a bishop, somewhere in that particular territory. What you'll find is just that decision to put yourself in the top 20%, 30% of status will empower you to take risks and to make offers in a way that you wouldn't if you come in very low status. If you come in very low status, most directors are lovely and casting directors are lovely, and they're very used to this. They will spend quite a few calories pulling you back up. They'll say nice things to you when you say, "Oh, sorry, I haven't learned it" or whatever. They'll happily say, "Oh, that's okay. Let's see where we're at." But every time they do that, they're spending calories on lifting you up that they could be spending on dreaming of you in the role. So yes, status is a useful thing to think about, which is come in around status 7 or status 8. If you want to know a little bit more about that, please come along to one of my workshops on status. I'll explain it quite a bit. Or if you want to read a book about it, Will Storr is a wonderful anthropologist who has written, social anthropologist who has written a whole book called Status, which I strongly recommend. It's a really good one for Australians and Kiwis and Canadians and to pay attention to, because we like to pretend in Commonwealth post-colonial societies that there's no such thing as status and hierarchy. there is, right? So it's a useful thing to be aware of and be in control of. So point number 7 is come in status 7 or 8. Okay, we're nearly there, guys. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is your circle of being. Now, some of you will be familiar with that already. We had Patsy Rodenberg come to the studio before COVID, and what an extraordinary experience it was. But Patsy talks a lot about circles of being, and it's a concept from her book, The Actor Speaks, Voicing the Actor. And then she's also got another a series of books that delve very deeply into this particular area. But The Actor Speaks is a good place to start. She talks there about there being 3 different circles of being, which is sort of the level of presence that you bring to any particular room. Now, when you're in an audition situation, very regularly actors will go into the first circle of being, or the third circle of being, and I'll explain them in a second. Actually, I'll explain it now. The first circle of being represents a state where your energy, your presence, there's no avoiding being a little bit woo about all of this. It's because actors are a little bit woo, right? But people have an energy, they have a vibe that they give off. You can call it what you like. Stanislavski talks about it being a sense of a feeling that rays are coming in and out of people. And there's certainly we do read people on that particular level. So Patsy Rodenberg says that in circle 1, the first circle of being, you're very inwardly focused, self-absorbed, often anxious, often very self-conscious. It's a very protected state to be in. And it was very useful for us when we were tiny little furry mammals being eaten by giant dinosaurs. And thank God for that meteor, by the way. Circle 1 is a very useful state of being. Deer go into it quite a bit. Rabbits go into it quite a bit, which is to go inwards and still and quiet and to observe. You can see how that pertains to your survival very usefully. And that's a very wonderful thing if you're potentially going to be eaten by a giant lizard. Not necessarily if you're going to turn up at a casting. We'd sometimes do, just out of fear and brainstem response, turn our casting directors and theatre companies and film directors into the great big thing that's going to eat you. And so what it means is that you turn up in first circle in a highly protective and observant state, unable to make offers. And then the casting director and the director have to pull you out of the first circle of being into preferably the second, but quite often the third. The third circle of being is the one where the energy is outwards. It's often aggressive and sometimes performative. Sometimes it seems a little bit excessive at times. Donald Trump spends most of his time in the third circle of being, for example, and you can get things done in the third circle of being. You can certainly be noticed, but the trouble with the third circle of being is that it also intrudes on other people. Your voice can often get very large from it. You can lose quite a lot of subtlety of nuance, and certainly your ability to read the room gets damaged as well. So you don't want to turn up for an audition in the first circle of being. You don't want to turn up necessarily in the third circle of being. Your character might be in the third, but you can drop into that once they start the actual audition itself, and then drop into the second circle of being when you're interacting with people. But there's a very high chance that the character that you're auditioning for is in the second circle of being, because, as Patsy would say, the second circle of being is the survival state. So people in Carol Hari Bushman, she very famously talks about all are in the second state of being, and the moment they're not, they get eaten. People in prison, the survivors are in the second circle of being, and so are Shakespeare's characters. The ones that go into the first circle of being get killed very quickly and easily. The ones who go into the third circle of being, I don't know, Julius Caesar, also get it in the neck eventually. But the second circle of being is the ideal state. It's where energy is balanced. You're not only transmitting, but you're also receiving. You're flowing both inwards and outwards. This is really handy because it means you're able to read a room, you're able to hear, and you're able to speak. You're able to receive, and you're also able to offer. So the second circle of being is an extremely powerful thing to be in. Okay, so that's that particular suggestion, which is number 8. Try to put yourself into the second circle of being. If you want to know more about that, please look up Patsy Rodenberg's work. She's got she had a book out just 2 years ago called Presence, which goes deeply into it. But the second circle is the center of all of that. All right, so we're nearly there, everyone. Point 9. Now, this one's a useful one and one that actors don't often think about, which is, it's going to sound a little bit flashy for a bit, which is first of all, understand and make use of the two nervous systems that are built into you, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems. Now, very regularly, actors will go into one of these two states, and I'll explain those two states, and then they'll only be able to operate while they're auditioning within the rules of either the sympathetic nervous system or the parasympathetic nervous system. The great director Mike Nichols talks about this in a slightly different way. He talks about press and release, where there are times that you will press very hard onto something, be intensely focused, and then there are times when you release, and that's when you step back off it. So, in terms of the two nervous system approaches, the sympathetic nervous system is one where is often referred to as the fight or flight response system, and that's one that prepares the body for stress, for danger, for intense situations. Now, it has a tendency of dropping you into first circle of being or the third circle of being. Your heart rate goes up, your muscles tense, you quite often become deaf, you get tunnel vision, and it's very useful for dealing with incredibly intense situations, but it's not useful for a lot of social interaction, and it's not useful for strategizing. And so that's where the parasympathetic nervous system comes into place. And the parasympathetic nervous system is often characterized by the phrase rest and digest. So if the sympathetic one is fight or flight, you all remember that one, and you know that feeling well. You know, that's the thing that squirt that you get just as the director calls action. If you can find out a way that you can balance the sympathetic nervous system with rest and digest. So rest and digest, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, promotes relaxation, healing, and energy conservation and rumination. Your heart rate goes down. Your pupils uh, relax to reduce light to relax the eyes. Your digestive juices get to work, and you actually start to be able to interact with things. So I'm not saying that either of these systems should dominate, but it's about working out a way that when you're in a casting situation, when you're in any intense situation, that you can allow the parasympathetic back in. And that's rest and digest. That's why every good acting school teaches yoga, for example, or some kind of awareness, meditative awareness routine, because those particular processes bring you back into the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, so nearly there, nearly there. The last one of the 10, and there are millions more, by the way. Give me a ring and I'll tell you the rest. But number 10 for tonight is exhaust all possible interpretations and choices before you get in the room. And that means like come at the script from every possible angle. Open your heart and soul to it. If you've been trained in actioning, that means get the action book out and see how many possible actions, how many different permutations of interpretation are possible. Of course, there'll be one that you fall in love with, but the chances that the take that you have, that this awesome, amazing version that is going to knock the casting director or the director's socks off, the chances of that actually being the one that they like is extraordinarily low. There's a sane range of interpretations and choices that you can make. My humble suggestion is that while you're doing the 6 reads, while you're doing your text analysis, while you're breaking the scene down into beats and units and actioning and doing all of those different things and working out what the central action of each unit are, whatever your training is, while you're doing all of that, allow the possibility that there's another way of looking at it and another way of looking at it and another way of looking at it. And if you can, the best way to find that out is by working alongside another actor, especially one who's up for it and willing to give things a red hot go. Now, if you exhaust every possible permutation of it, you know which are the sane ones, you know which are the insane ones, you know which ones feel really, really good. That means that when you're given an offer for adjustment or change, instead of going into that sympathetic nervous response system again, which is fight or flight. Hang on a sec, that isn't what I prepared for. That isn't how I saw it. Instead, you can go into rest and digest, which is as the person suggests. I don't know. I've always wondered, maybe it's because that character's mother didn't like them. But rather than anything new being alarming and something that freaks you out, it can be so exciting because it's like, oh my God, I haven't thought about that. Yes, please, let's explore it. Anything else, you've already given it a red hot go. And so you'll be doubly prepared that way. And anything new will be a delight. So, number 10 is exhaust all possible interpretations and choices while you're rehearsing. So don't, rather than narrow in on one particular one, instead, you'll give it a red hot go many different ways. You'll know which ones feel right. Yeah. And I've got a simple rule for that, which is if it feels shit, it probably is. Yeah, if it feels good, it probably is. And then there'll be a field of ones that feel good and a field of ones that feel bad. And let's see what the casting director and the director offer. So that's the 10. Oh my, it's 6:48 already. Those of you who are still with me, thanks for staying around. My last note, I think, is, so this is the bonus out of the 10, which is something that actors call the fuck it factor. The fuck it factor works like this. If you get a casting for something that you don't want, the joker in the industry is that that's the one you'll get, right? And what it comes down to is the actor going, oh, fuck it, right? I'm going to give it a red hot go anyway and really do everything I can. So quite often, just letting go, doing all of the work at the offset, reading the play 6 times, exhausting every possible level of interpretation, coming in status 8, being in the second circle of being, all of those things, and then also just thinking, oh, well, what that'll do is guarantee that you won't be in the acting suit. You'll be just yourself. So the fuck it factor is a very useful one. Now, they're my 10 BuzzFeed suggestions for how to audition a little better. I've been asked a few questions, which I'll get to just now, if that's okay. One of the questions that came up just recently is this one. Which local actors have I worked with continuously that give great auditions, and why? My cheats answer for that is that I don't audition my favorite actors. I court them. I I sneak up to them in foyers and I have a quiet word in their ear and I sing sweet nothings in them because I've got a casting problem, right? And so my favorite actors are the ones that I know will solve it and do all of the things on that list as a matter of course. That being said, though, a lot of my favorite actors get cast all the time, and that's because they come in having done all of that homework. So there's another question, which is, can I touch on auditioning for drama schools? And I think maybe the useful thing to think about with drama schools is, first of all, the big schools audition so many people, right? And so my offer for the big schools is simply this. I'm going to quote Michel Foucault, which is going to sound really pretentious, but he said, "Cultivate your legitimate strangeness. Cultivate your legitimate strangeness." Larry Moss puts it a little bit differently. He says, if you do the work, if you attend to the script that you've been given and you pour all of yourself in it, you're giving a gift to the universe, which is you, something which is unique and special. And the greatest danger is that people try to fit themselves into a rubric. They try to think, oh, what is it that those particular schools want? Um, and what is it those particular schools want is something they haven't seen before. And the way you can guarantee that is by just being you, right? How do you be you? It's simple. You replace your needs with the character's needs, and you do everything you can to get what the character needs with your skills. So hopefully that answers that question. I've just been asked to list all 10 points again. I can send this off to and Elise can post them off to you. But here are the 10 points. 1, mindset. They have a casting problem. You don't have a career problem. 2, it's not a popularity contest. It's an opportunity to present your wares and demonstrate your level of craft, quite literally to show your benchmark. 3, prepare enough to get in the top 10%. You'd be surprised how easy it is to get into the top 30, and it only takes dedication and devotion to get into the top 10. Also, if you're at the top 10 level of preparation, you enjoy yourself. The only time actors don't enjoy themselves is when they haven't done the work, right? You know, the only time you hate being in rehearsal is when you haven't got your lines down. So do the work and enjoy yourself. Be awesome. Okay. 4, beware of the shower version. Instead, because of dependent state theory, make sure that you imagine your performance in the most hostile circumstances possible, as well as imagining it in the most beneficial ones possible. That way you won't be thrown when you get out into the room and you haven't got a warm shower pouring down your back and nobody watching you. And suddenly you'll discover that the shower version problem has been dissolved. 5 is beware of the acting suit. That is, just remember that the needs of the character are more important than the needs of the actor. So don't let those things squeeze in, you know, to be liked, to be impressive, to be convincing. All of these things, right? Those are actions that actors play and human beings play a lot less. Okay, so beware of the acting suit is number 5. Number 6, nerves are excitement. And so remember that, reframe your perspective and go into cognitive reappraisal, which is you're not scared, you're excited. You're not nervous, you're optimistic. The feeling's the same. How you cognitively frame it is everything. Okay, number 7, try status 8. And if you think status 8 is a little bit too cocky, come in status 7. If you want to know more about that, read Will Storr's book. Number 8, come in the second circle of presence, the second state of being. And I strongly recommend Patsy Rodenberg's work on that. So come in the second circle, which is giving and receiving. Yep, transmitting and receiving. As opposed to the first circle, which is going inwards and observing and highly protected, and the third circle, which is intrusive and invasive, and sometimes some would say even bullying, where you step out into other people. Patsy often says that the first circle is of the past, and the third circle is of the future, and the second circle is of the moment. And drama is the art of the present moment. So go into second circle, you'll see how much better you feel. Number 9, understand that there's a balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, and dance between the two of them. So fight and flight, rest and digest. Allow those two states to be in a dance with one another rather than to let one of those nervous systems dominate while you're in the rehearsal room. Number 10 is exhaust all possible interpretations and choices. So any new ones that are offered are an awfully big adventure. And number 11 is don't forget the fuck it factor. And the fuck it factor is do all of the 10 points and then who cares? You've done the work. And because you have become competent, you will appear confident, right? So just who cares? And the chances are that'll be the one you get. Like I said, the mythology in the industry is you get the gigs that you don't care about. And there's a clue in there. Okay. So, and I remember I quoted Foucault, cultivate your legitimate strangeness. Okay. Now a couple of questions have been sent in and a couple more, and then I think we might finish up here. So one of the questions is, how should your approach to acting for an audition differ from a performance? I would argue not at all, except to be prepared to have a wider range of choice in the audition process. You're not going to get 4 to 6 weeks rehearsal, alas. Probably going to regularly get about 4 or 5 days. So that will change things a little bit, but I would say don't scrimp, yeah. Don't skimp on that. Do the 6 reads. Make sure you've got your lines down. Make sure you've exhausted all possible interpretations. So I would say rather than treat them differently, it's just try to get to the level of preparation you'd be at 4 weeks rehearsal in whatever time you've got. If that's 4 hours, then go for it. Yeah. But there's no substitute for reading a piece over and over again and doing the proper analysis. There's no faking it. And then the last one here is, what are your top tips for succeeding at group workshop style callback auditions? My biggest tip for that is actually in the top 10, which is to be in the second circle, receive and transmit. Yep. You can see there's a strong argument here for balance. Receive and transmit, parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. So make sure that you are flexible enough to activate all of your systems. Yeah. Another useful way of thinking about that is the three different levels of the brain, the triune brain. So and so. One of the particular ways of thinking about this is that there are three different layers of brain function. There's the brain stem, which is the survival state, and that's responsible for fight, flight, for sex, for food, for sleep, all of those really powerful urges. Then there's the limbic system, which is your emotional world, which helps you with socially interact. And then there is your prefrontal cortex, your cortex, neocortex, and your prefrontal lobes, which is your cognitive and thinking ability. And a good way of sort of summarizing those is that the survival state asks, "Am I safe?" The emotional state asks, "Am I loved?" And the executive state, the thinking part of the brain, thinks, "What can I learn from this?" Now, actors can get trapped in one of those three places too. There's the functions of the mind. They either get stuck in the brainstem, or they get stuck in the emotional world, or they get stuck in the analytic. And what you want to do is keep all of those passageways open. And the only way you can do that is by practicing over and over again, right? So you don't want to be known as a head actor or a body actor or a heart actor. You want to be known as an actor who has total access to head, heart, and body at all times. So the whole thing is an integrated system. So that's the best way to succeed in group workshop auditions, is to make sure you're giving and receiving, make sure you're pressing and releasing, and making sure that your brainstem, your limbic system, and your cortex are all communicating with each other. How do you do that? Training, training, practice, practice. That's the best way to do it, my friends. So I'm just having a little look at some of the questions coming in. One last one. So, is there an easy way of determining what is more important? Focusing on the casting problem and not treating the audition as a popularity contest, or having your status high? I feel as if these two could be in conflict. Oh, okay. Yes. Look, I think the phrase "competence is confidence" is a useful one, right? If you're in second circle and you're not in third circle, the chances of you, like, so when you come in to solve a casting problem, it's not like you're welcome, ladies and gentlemen, smoking a cigar. It's the same sort of demeanor that a surgeon might have for somebody in ER. It's about coming in when identifying what the problem is and professionally engaging with it. Yeah. So if you call a carpenter in and you need to get some work done on some bookshelves, which are cedar, then what I want to hear from that carpenter is how it's possible. Right, as opposed to, "I'm the best carpenter that the world's ever seen," and that's status 9, status 10 anyway. 7 or 8 is a pretty good place to be. Hopefully that's got a little bit closer to it. So High status doesn't necessarily mean blowhard, by the way. That your neurosis doesn't take over. Maybe that's another way of thinking about it. Um, so, and the next question here. Different advice I've heard is to not explore all the interpretations before, in case that limits your inventiveness in the moment. Um, I don't buy it. I think imaginative rumination is an incredibly fertile thing, you know. So, for example, when I work on a play, I don't know, I quite short notice. I was asked to do Hamlet this year. And the moment I said yes to it, I read the play twice a day, the whole play twice a day, and the places that it takes you, right, in imaginative rumination cannot be substituted for in the moment intuition. Intuition's terrific, but as Louis Armstrong said, you know, you need to do your scales. So your skill level matches your inspiration. But if you don't do your scales, it doesn't matter how fantastic your idea is. If your instrument is not capable of finding the progressions, the chances of you actually hitting it just because you feel cool and fresh and in the moment on the day is lower. So I think it's about getting your competence level much higher. And staying fertile the whole time. There's a phrase that gets used regularly, which is hold on tightly, let go lightly, right? Which is, yeah, give something a red hot go, then let go of it, really let go of it and go somewhere else. But I don't know. I don't think the benefits from having a random intuitive moment outweigh you having spent time artistically and ruminatively and in a fertile way, in a fecund way, watering a seed and allowing it to grow every which way. Yeah, I don't think intuition trumps that, but I do think that if you're prepared and the intuition comes, that's when the magic really happens. So hopefully that's answered that. The last question, dear friends, is if you're in your 40s, what prospects are there for actors in context of today's market? Um, the great thing about acting, and please everybody listen to this, is that unlike nearly every other profession, there it's not linear in terms of opportunity. There are nodes in the acting profession where people come in and come out, right? So there are loads of people in the 18 to 22 casting range. Yeah, loads of them. Loads of them leave before we get to the next casting range, which is the Saturn return. So that's the ingenue, you know. The Saturn return is what, 27 to 32, 33, and that's another casting node. And there are lots of people who are in that one who have left the industry or have progressed through to the next one, but there are loads of people who leave, and that means that all of those people who leave means that there's a whole bunch of opportunities that exist in the 27 to 33. Yeah. Then from 27 to 33, then there's the midlife crisis casting node where lots of stories about, you know, Jesus, a better or this should have added up to something if they haven't come out of the Saturn return. And then there's the venerable elders casting nodes that come on after that. At each point in time, people come in and out of the industry, so it offers the opportunity that way. And proof of that is if you ever go to a party full of actors. I mean, what a joy it is. You know, if you go to an actors party, there'll be I've seen a 12-year-old sitting on the front porch with a 65-year-old or a 70-year-old actor, without there being any sense of hierarchy, any sense of, you know, oh, that's this, I've been in the industry for this long, etc. It's just we're different that way. I think we have a very different relationship to time. So don't worry about what age you're in, because you're going to hit a casting node where opportunities will present themselves. But it's not like you can miss the boat. If you've got your craft level up, and you can match it with the people who are already there, you'll be welcomed in. Well, dear friends, I think that might come to the end. It's 7 o'clock. I think Kim said 20 minutes. I talked for too long, as always. Um, very happy to send to answer questions by email later on when I come back after the break. But I think maybe it's time now to wish you all a very, very happy Christmas and new year, and I look forward to seeing you as you come back through 16th Street and also out in the industry. But please don't hesitate to contact us if there are questions that you wanted answered that haven't been answered, and I'll do what I can. But like I said, there's no magic formula, but there is no substitute for preparation and for really allowing yourself to drop your persona and be yourself, empowered and confident. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, and Happy New Year.